All right. My next guest is an awesome hacker. I would call him a great friend. I've had the pleasure to see him do his magic at a bunch of live hacking events with HackerOne. And he is one of the people that has written some of the tools that I use. If you've ever watched any of my videos, if you've ever watched any of my live streams, you know that I love using HTTP probe. And if you watched my DEF CON talk last year, you can see that we pretty much benchmarked against Meg a lot to do some of the things that we did for our project. So if you haven't guessed who it is, our next guest is Tom, aka Tom Nom Nom. We're going to have chat pick the target. I think we have an idea who it's going to be, but we're going to let chat pick a target, and we're going to give Tom a good 45 minutes to an hour, let him do his magic. So not too long, not too short, enough to show us his workflow, maybe some of the things that he thinks chat should take away from doing all this hacking. So chat, let's welcome Tom to the stream. I'm going to bring him on just about now. Maybe not. All right. Well, if you're watching the stream live, you know that my PC is breaking a lot today. Every time I crash and burn, this happens. I'm going to fix this live. Everything we do today is going to be live, so bear with me with the low quality of video today. But Tom, welcome to the stream, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. If you see me look down here, it's because I'm looking at myself on a laptop.
Sounds good. How you doing, man? It's been a while. I haven't gotten to pleasure to talk to you or hang out in a while. How's it going? How's life?
Yeah, not too bad. I moved house recently, so I'm kind of in a bit of a mess of stuff. But I'm no longer in a garage, which is awesome. I have a window and stuff.
I was going to say you don't have your giant TV lighting you up anymore right now.
Oh, I do. It's just I've got the Google Meets thing up, so it's a black screen. There you go, white screen.
There we go. Now we see.
Should make a big difference.
It makes a huge difference, man.
Yeah, so you'll see me change between illuminated and not when we go between terminals and web browsers.
All right, so I've already kind of told you this. Unfortunately, I'm having some issues with my PC. Problem number one is I'm on Windows. I got to fix that soon and maybe go back to Ubuntu. But if it does crash, I'm going to come back, fix it. We'll figure out how it's going to work with the VOD. But I don't know if you've watched a new stream setup. So we've changed live recon to literally doing live recon now, except I don't do any recon. It's up to you to do it. If you'd ever want me to hide your screen, let me know. I could do that for you. If you're doing something you want to have OBSEC, you're also welcome to stop sharing your screen at any point. Chat is going to give us a few targets. I think I saw Uber in there a bunch of times, but you're welcome to say no. I'm going to put up a poll. But I saw Uber in there. I saw Shopify. We don't want it to be a huge target. We want it to be big enough to a point where you can show us some stuff you do when someone gives you a new target. So I'm gonna. Should we hack on? It says Shopify. Someone said Uber. That said Microsoft, which is kind of a huge one, but we'll give it a. We'll put it there. Any targets you like? I'm gonna put Snapchat on there because that's the one Patrick did and it was really fun.
Okay. I don't mind. Let the chat decide.
All right. I put up 4 targets, chat. Poll's going to be up for only 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Vote. Let's go. I should put Apple's way too big, I think. I don't know why people said Shopify. I don't think Shopify has a huge scope, but we'll do it. Ooh, Netflix was the other one that I missed. Hold on, let me see if I can edit. If I can edit, no, I can't. All right, we'll do Netflix for next week. So it looks like Snapchat and Shopify are in the lead. Everybody that said Uber, you're not voting. You guys are liars. 11% Uber, 5 votes. Shopify in the lead with 25 votes. Snapchat coming up with 20. It looks like Shopify might be our winner. Why Shopify? It's so random. It's so random. No, if you can't drop, you can't drop the program name in the chat. You got to vote. There's a voting thing happening somewhere here, I think. Go vote. But it looks like Shopify is going to win by a mile. I'm surprised no one said Spotify instead of Shopify.
That's fine.
All right, chat, you win. Shopify is our winner. We'll do Shopify. I mean, 60 votes. There's no beating that. Yeah, there's no way that, unless you guys are gonna spend a lot of channel points, there's no freaking way you're gonna put Snapchat at the top. All right, so let's start off with what is your first step. You're welcome to share your screen if you like, or we can talk it through before we jump on it.
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen and see how much I screw up, I guess. Entire screen.
Again, this is live. Everything we do right now is going to be live. Bear with us.
I'll try my best to be careful. Cool.
And hopefully if you that'll work. Zoom in a little bit for me, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to make text size big and stuff.
Awesome. Chat, let me know if you can see that.
If you can make my face smaller, that would probably be the best thing. Get my face out of the way. I have
to, I think, pin this. There we go.
Oh, that's better.
Awesome. All right. We're live.
Cool. So Shopify. So a place I would start is in a terminal, perhaps not surprisingly. In my Recon directory, where all of my Recon stuff goes. And I almost certainly already have a Shopify directory, so let's make a Ben directory instead. And then I would go and have a look at the Shopify bug bounty program.
Wow, that's a big ass scope. I didn't know that had Shopify Cloud in there. Holy crap! Okay.
Yeah. Oh, neither did I. I haven't looked at this one before. And like, if this was a really big scope, I would I have a tool to fetch scopes that I would probably use, but because it's not very much, I'll probably just make myself a file for all the wildcard domains that I've got. Okay. And I'm just going to copy and paste them in. Like, there's nothing wrong with that kind of low-tech approach at all. So we got Shopify Cloud, Shopify.com. Any other wildcards in here?
I think that's it.
Just those two. I really like how they have something specifically to say we are not quite right.
That is great.
So wildcards we have. What next? Probably you want to go off and find some subdomains, right? So I'll take the wildcards that I've got and I'll pump them into Asset Finder like that.
I thought AS was like a command you had. I was like, whoa, what does that do?
The what? Sorry? The AS command.
Yeah, you wrote AS. I'm like, whoa, is that a new command? Is that a new tool he wrote? It just called it AS to compete with MIG, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
So you do subs only on Asset Finder.
Yeah, and I'll throw them into a file full of domains. Looks like there's going to be a lot. And usually if I'm doing approaching a new target, I'm probably going to use more than just Asset Finder, to be honest. So I'll probably use Find Domain, seems pretty good as well. But if I'm just I want something quick, I'll tend to just use Asset Finder. Although one of the things it apparently doesn't do very well is remove things like wildcards and stuff from its inputs. So let's fix that.
So before we move on, everything that Tom uses, Asset Finder was one and ANU was the other. They're both on Tom's GitHub. You should definitely go check out his GitHub. He has a lot of good tools on there. Go download them. So I just had to make sure people understand all the tools that you're showing so far is public and they can use it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I won't use anything that you can't also get your hands on. I'll try and point out things that I wrote, but I feel like I end up repeating myself quite a bit when I do that. So I noticed that some of these going to this file were not clean. They had wildcard symbols on the beginning of them and stuff like that. So nice low-tech way to have a look through them is I'll sort them all and then hop to the end. So any special characters are going to be right at the end.
Nice.
And I can just trim them out. Underscores as well. A little bit strange.
Do you keep those?
Yeah, I can keep them.
Okay.
So I'll throw those in there. And I want to know what's listening. So I'm going to use HTTP probe.
Nice.
With a concurrency of, 80 or something like that.
Then you do that to see which ones are going to respond with on port 443 and 80, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think I have something I wrote for this to prefer HTTPS as well.
Okay.
So if there's an HTTPS version out there, it won't give me the HTTP version. So um, some people like having it that way. Some people don't.
Someone just in the chat said I literally just tried to back scroll Tom's terminal. I'm sorry, that's just so
I do
good.
that all the time. I'm trying to like, you'll know, like when you record videos and stuff like that with screencasts, like trying
Yeah.
to close windows on your screen just doesn't work.
What does
Uh,
HTTP probe do? Like I mentioned, it's gonna check and see which host that he has on there is going to respond. How does ANU work? I've seen you use ANU a few times. You sent it to me, and unfortunately, I've never used it. I think it's gonna be our next thing. But what is
that's a good
ANU?
question. So let's text size up a bit. So you might have seen me use T in the past,
Yep.
TEE, with -A to append. So it's kind of like that, except if a line already exists in a file, it doesn't add it.
Got
So
it. Okay.
a really common thing, for me at least, is like I have a text file full of domains, right? And I'm going to use a few different tools to look for domains. So I don't want to have to like deduplicate them all the time. So what new does is it will only add new lines to the file, and you don't end up with any duplicates in there. But also it will output what the new lines were,
Nice.
which is also really useful for things like this. So like I've taken that file full of domains and I've thrown it through HTTP probe to find which servers have got like listening HTTP on them.
Right.
But let's say I'm going to control C this because
This is
it's
a
going to
good way
take
for
forever.
diffing, right? Like it's great to diff on the fly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But say like I go off and use what's another tool? Find domain or something like that. Yeah, I can do that. So
Oh, so you can see what new domains came out of each tool, but you
yeah,
by doing a
exactly.
new. Got it. Okay. Do you use find domain
So
regularly?
yeah, I use it reasonably often. I've not
Okay.
been doing much hacking for the last sort of year or so,
Yeah, I understand that.
but I have used find domain for a bunch of stuff. Okay, so it's found some domains, right?
Right.
And a bunch of these are going to be duplicates. Wow, there's a lot.
Oh, so you're gonna run a new on these and add it to your old
Yeah.
file. Got it. Okay, that's very cool.
So these are like from find domain files, and there's a few hundred of them in there. There's like 522. So what I would do is say, well, these ones that are from find domain, I want to add them into my domains file.
You're gonna HTTP probe it before you do the domains, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So, like, but any new ones, I haven't HTTP probed them yet because I've
Got
already
it.
found my domains and then gone off and done the HTTP probe thing.
All
But
right.
by doing it this way, I can just pipe straight to HTTP probe, and then into a new host. It turns out there wasn't any of them, but
Wow, that was
what that
quick.
would have done, if there was any new domains, it would have done that whole thing
The listing of them. Yeah.
with them all. So I've got some hosts. How many have I got? 4,305.
Okay.
So fairly big.
And those all responded to, right? This is after HTTP probe, the 4,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are all ones that have got HTTP or HTTPS prefixes or whatever on them. And to be honest, like a lot of them look like they're going to be fairly boring, but whatever.
I mean, the number ones and the SMTP ones, we can kind of skip or just use one or two of them, right?
Yeah, probably. So what I would probably do is go like, I've got 4,000 hosts or whatever. Like, what am I going to look at? So I'll use something like FFF, which is a tool I wrote. It's on GitHub, to do something like save the status of all of those to just get the root page. So just slash, and then I'll just request them all.
So you're saving the body of each of those, like Meg does, but you're just hitting the root folder?
Yeah, exactly. So it could do exactly the same thing with Meg if I wanted to.
Yeah,
Um,
that was pretty fast. Okay.
I think it was fast because I set the delay to low.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see how many we got. So there'll be a bunch of files in here with a name, a body. So there's body files, and then there's the meta files as well.
What is the difference between meta and the body?
Was it meta? Dot headers. Sorry, I thought they were called dot meta.
Okay,
So
that
there's
makes
these
sense.
dot headers files as well. So if you look at the body file, it's just like whatever the HTML response was.
So for people that don't know why, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep throwing questions at you, but for people that don't know why headers are important, why do you collect headers?
So that's a really good question, actually. So let's talk about HTTP for a second. So like you'll know that if you load example.com in your browser, you get some HTML back, right?
Yep.
But there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on there. So what you can actually do, HTTP is simple enough that you can write it by hand if you want to. So if we telnet to example.com on port 80, what we have is a request line, which is our method, and then a path, and the HTTP version. And then we say what host we're trying to get to, example.com. That's a header. And then we might have something like another header to say, we'll accept text/HTML content. And then you get two empty lines. And then you get the response headers, right? So you get a status line, and then a bunch of key value pairs that are giving me metadata about the response. And sometimes they're boring, but sometimes they're interesting. So like this tells me like what server software is being run. And there's other interesting things you can do as well. Like you can see this connection is actually still open because I didn't specify I wanted the connection to be closed. So actually I can send another one. I'm not going to send a post request. I could send an options request, HTTP 1.1 for the host of example.com, and it's going to tell me what methods it allows, for example. But if I did something like get slash on HTTP 1.1 for example.com, and I also said, oh, by the way, I want you to close the connection when you're done. Note that it'll close the connection when it's done. Right? So all of the metadata about the page is in those HTTP headers, which means I'm interested in them. And in particular, I'm interested in things that look weird or like different to requests that I've seen elsewhere.
Okay.
So x-shopify-stage, for example, like that's not a standard header. You can probably guess from the fact that it's got the word Shopify in it. And just tell me it's on production. So something I might be interested in would be, well, how many instances have I got of those? And have I hit anything that is not production? So we'll go case insensitive. We do not want the file name. And we'll just get unique ones. So, kind of interesting. There's a canary one there.
Yeah.
So that's not part of the production environment in all of these particular ones. So these IPs, 105.shopify.com as well.
One state. Yeah.
One state. What the hell is that?
Interesting one,
yeah. Sorting hat pod ID -1. Storefront render ID.
So it's a good thing to chase for leads, right? Whether your lead is to find production staging environments, looking for similar apps, or even if you are just enumerating or fingerprinting for, I don't know, looking for Jenkins or Jira or something like that, right? Because of the response that the server gives you.
Exactly. So like I might look for specific stuff. So like debug pages or what else have I got in here? GF is another one of my tools for like storing rep patterns, basically.
Yeah.
So I might look for like debug pages, or I had another one in here that I thought would be useful. I can't see it. Takeovers, URLs, that sort of thing.
What is the HTTP auth? Like different things beyond 401,
So
maybe?
that looks for things that look kind of like some user and a password
Yeah.
at example.com, for example. And as a result, it also finds email addresses.
Ah, okay.
Apparently, there aren't any in this, which is fair enough.
So this is how you enumerate stuff. You look
Yeah.
for, okay, debug pages. Okay.
But again, like what I'm looking for is stuff that stands out. So you got to think a little bit about how Shopify would build stuff. They're pretty big. They have a lot of engineers. They've got a lot of online services. That means they're using some kind of configuration management, probably.
Right.
And that means you can expect a great deal of consistency across their environment. And if you find places where there isn't consistency, maybe that service was not built with their configuration management and their like standard processes or something like that. Maybe it's something outside of their SDLC. And that, to me at least, I think means it's more likely that there's going to be some interesting bugs or something like that.
Okay.
So one of the things I might do is look for, I think it's called meg headers or something. So this is all of the headers that appear in all of those files. So I'll throw those in a Vim. And there's 16,000 of them.
Wow. It's a lot.
But if you sort them so that they're unique, there's only like 4,000, which is not too bad. And you can skip over a lot of them, right? So like CF Ray, this is all, CF is CloudFront,
yeah, CloudFront.
not Cloudflare. It's the other one. So
wait, is it CloudFront? Okay.
I believe so. Let's find out.
But I mean, it's one of those ones that it's not going to really give us much.
Oh, it's Cloudflare. Oh,
I was going to say, they're not going to be using Cloudflare and CloudFront at the same time, right?
Yeah, so Cloudflare, I guess. But
like
I can skip a lot of these things. I can just basically hold page down and ignore because they're sorted. So all of these similar things are going to be in the same place, right?
Right.
So they're boring. Server timing, like that's quite interesting because there's only one server timing header shown up in here, and yet they have what looks to be like quite a precise number here, which means there's probably only one of these appeared in that whole data set, which means it's probably interesting. And that's on docs.shopify.com. So that tells me there's something different about docs.shopify.com to everything else.
Right.
And also, like we had all those X Shopify headers on all of the other ones. We don't have it on here. What else have we got? X download options, XDC.
Is it safe to say your Recon is not so much focused on asset discovery? It is mostly around information gathering when it comes down to Recon for you, while you do everything else. So you get all these domains, but you don't focus on getting as many domains as you can. You just wanted to do as fast as you can and then focus on information gathering.
I think it's a bit of both. I think, you know, if I'm not on a 45-minute time limit, I would spend more time looking for domains. But, you know, even like when do you stop, right?
Right.
It could be a while. But I don't really differentiate the two that much. I just want information. And sometimes that information is which hosts are around, and sometimes that information is what software are they running, and sometimes it's when did it last change, or what version is it running, and you don't really know sometimes until you find it. But I think generally that approach of looking for things that are different to all of the others is what I would be going for.
Fair enough.
So like this has caught my interest because nothing else has this header, this server timing header, which means it's probably different to everything else. And part of that is just going, well, I've got 4,000 servers to deal with. Probably 3,000 of them are all going to be the same. So I would look at one of those, but not the other ones, right? So what the hell is this thing running? I don't know. So I look at, you know, what cookies is it giving me? some kind of base64 encoded thing. I don't recognize the prefix, which means it's probably encoded, I would guess. There's a weird separation there. I'm not going to look at that.
Okay, so once so you identify interesting things or interesting. I'm trying to say this as I'm thinking it. So you identify your next steps pretty much based on all the information that you've gathered, all these like abnormalities you see with all the responses that you've gotten. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So other things to pull out. I might look for just the body files and pass them to HTML2.
Where the
pull out the tag.
Okay,
also mine.
Okay.
And pull out the title tags. And again, there's lots of duplications. I saw it as someone asked in the chat, how did I do the sort thing? I have it on a keystroke, but you can do it with %bang sort-u, and that'll sort things. And I additionally use version sort, which pays attention to special characters and things like that, which is quite useful when you're dealing with URLs and stuff. So it turns out there's only 3 things that I've seen here.
The 403 looks a little bit interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Create an e-commerce website, sell online. So that's going to be most of them, I guess. And page temporarily unavailable. So of those, probably the 403 forbidden is the most interesting. And just to get an idea of how common that is, I would just see like how many. Let me just hide this out of the way. How many there is? There's 75 of those.
Okay.
So is there anything in common between these URLs? A lot of them are some number.nat.ash.shopify.com.
Interesting.
I assume that's probably a reference to network address translation. Ash, I don't know, which makes me think it's probably like a data center or identifier or something like that.
Yeah.
So nothing super interesting in those. Kind of a subset of things to look at as well is just like which servers things report. In this case, Cloudflare for everything. And nothing at all for anything else, which is awesome. So okay, let's go back to those headers actually, because there's probably something else interesting in here. So we've got the canary in the production. The sorting out pod ID thing, I thought was kind of interesting. That makes me think they're running Kubernetes, probably
because of the pod.
Yeah, because of the pod. What's also interesting is that I'm only seeing one particular pod ID, which means they're probably using some kind of consistent hashing based on source IP, which is kind of interesting in of itself, because that means it might be worth my time trying some things from a few different IPs or a few different places, so that I end up hitting different pods and I can see if they're consistent between them.
Okay. What's next? So if you were, this is going to be a little bit harder to find something on Shopify to, that's interesting enough because of, what would you do next? What does your content gathering look like? Do you do a lot of brute forcing, or do you prefer to look for these kind of abnormalities first before you pick a target?
Yeah, so sometimes it depends on what you find, right, the first time. So sometimes you'll find an abnormality and you think, that's really interesting, like some server software that you weren't expecting to see, like a server header that says, I'm running PHP version 4.
Right.
I'm looking at that straight away. If I'm not finding too much, I'd probably be looking back to my wildcards again.
Okay.
And I've never looked at Shopify Cloud before, actually, so I'm going to kind of focus on that one. And I would use wayback URLs to... Oh, I can't spell URLs. URLs. To see if there's anything interesting on there at all. And it it really does not look like it. bunch of robots.txt files.
It's unfortunate.
Not really anything more interesting than that. Another mention of Kubernetes as well. Yeah. So that sounds like that was likely.
And there have been changes to it too with
robots.txt. So this is something that I probably would brute force, I think.
Okay.
Because, like, why have you got an Nginx server with no index, right? It's serving something, presumably, at least. It must exist for a good reason.
Plus, having Kubernetes in there and API doesn't help you, wonder what's on there, right?
Exactly. So I would use something like one of my, first of all, anyway, I have like some smallish word lists that look for like common config files and things like that. And when I say smallish, they are like 184
Not bad
lines in that one. So I'd combine those with my hosts file. Probably, actually, no, not with the hosts file. Let's do it just with that one specific thing. Yeah. 2 slashes in there. We do not need 2 slashes. And then I'll use something like FFF defection. So reminder of the help. So I'll say I want to save things with a status of 200.
Okay. So if it hits all those URLs, it comes back as 200. You save it in config files.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
With a delay of like 5 milliseconds between requests or something like that. And, it looks like it did not find any. Everything was a 404.
Okay.
At which point I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have a look at FUF. Okay. Probably. Is that the one? Yeah.
Now that this is where you throw it a larger... and this is a sec list, so if people are watching wondering where this list come from, you can go and GitHub sec list and download it.
Yeah, so this is the Daniel Meisler?
Yeah.
I've never actually tried to say his name out loud. I just realized. Word list. So I'd have a look at that. See if it finds anything. So there's 2 sort of word lists I use commonly in there. It's the raft large files and the raft large directories. And
would you do this? Sorry to interrupt you real quick. Would you do the same? Because someone made a comment in the chat about Apple. Would you have approached a large company like Apple the same way you're doing Shopify right now?
Early stages, yeah, pretty similar.
Okay.
I'm looking for something that stands out to me that's kind of different to go and poke at further.
Right.
And like probably pull into Burp as well, for example. So
okay.
Let's have a look at that docs one. Right, this help.shopify.com, because that was kind of different to everything else. And also, I'll just... Okay, it's not out of scope. That's awesome. That's always good. So
I feel like this is going to be a Zendesk or something, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. But like,
we'll figure it out soon enough. What do you think about this blue Burp Suite logo now? When you alt tab and you don't see the old one anymore, does that throw you off?
It's okay. I think I'll have forgotten in a few months, probably.
I just can't. When I'm alt tabbing, I can't ever find it, and I go, "Oh, it's no longer, orange."
Yeah, definitely. So let's do something about this font size so that you can all see it. Even that's a bit small, right? Okay, let's go 32.
Awesome. Oh, man. That's definitely. We can definitely see that.
And we'll want a bigger font size on HTTP requests as well. So.
Chat's making a comment about you using community. I love that, but why?
So I haven't been hacking for a year or so. So last time my license expired, I did not renew it because it's not worth it if you're not using it very often.
Absolutely.
And also, I think I saw a question in the chat earlier on, which was, am I a developer for my day job? No, I am actually a security researcher for my day job. So the other thing is I do also have a pro license for Burp on my work machine behind me. So if I'm doing stuff for work, I have proper Burp, and then when I'm just tinkering around, I got Community Edition as well. So
you also were one of the early live Recon guests. So if you want to hear about Tom's background, I have a full interview with him on my YouTube channel. Go look it up. There's some really, really good advice in there, and also you get to hear about his background and why he likes open source tool development and some of his other cool projects as well.
Man, with large text size, Burp is a whole different. You can't read anything.
Yeah, it's a lot harder, man. It's a lot harder.
That's because I'm using a 4K screen.
So you just so you pretty much loaded the same website, the Shopify.com. Now you're looking at the history of what it loaded in the background while it was loading the main page, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So again, like for me, Recon's all information gathering, like because, and I said it over and over again, looking for things that stand out. You can't do that until you've figured out what the normal looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the early stages for me are figuring out what does normal look like for this system. You know, like do they tend to be passing things around with query string parameters? Are they tend to be using post data instead? You sometimes see those differences. What does their static asset structure look like as well? Is always, I think, something that people kind of ignore because it's like, oh yeah, it's JavaScript files, right? That's boring. But like maybe probably not. And again, like if you think about the way that they probably build things, you can sort of figure out why. So like this is on cdn.shopify.com in this case. But you know, is cdn.shopify.com, is that all loaded off one server? Like probably not.
Right.
And to me, that means there's probably going to be some kind of layer 7 shenanigans going on at the edge of their network saying, like, if it's /Shopify Cloud, it's going to go to this cluster of servers, or if it's / something else, go to some other cluster. Mm-hmm. Maybe, anyway, not necessarily. So one of the things I'd be looking at is, like, how does each level of this directory structure respond? Does it change at all?
Right.
Compared to the root, what does a 404 look like, and so on. And in this case, they all look basically the same. Apart from that one, which is, they've got different lengths in the responses. I don't know why. You know.
I mean, it could be, that doesn't make sense. I was going to say it could be the URL that you're requesting, but it should have gone less, not more, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
So usually with stuff like that, it's just like something random in a header or something like that. So like, what the hell is this site? It's a standard-ish looking help site. I can't see anything that tells me what software it's running. Don't know, have you spotted anything? Well, it's got OpenSearch, CDN, Shopify. So like it could be a custom thing. Well, like it seems kind of unlikely, right? Like why would you build your own help site? I also can't see anything that says like this is Zendesk or this is Salesforce. Or
if this was a Salesforce or Zendesk app, would you have still gone after it?
Salesforce maybe. Because I've seen a few things in other Salesforce sites because you can customize them pretty heavily. You can upload your own JavaScript, that kind of thing. Zendesk I'm not super familiar with. I would probably leave it alone.
Okay.
But you know, the thing is, regardless of what it is you're going after, figure out what the hell it does. And often, I think, with the help of Wayback URLs as well, is a good call. So who knows what stuff you might find. Let's see that running in the background. So we've got language changes. That's potentially something interesting to look at. Link to shopify.com. There's some login functionality. So like, do you need to be registered with standard Shopify?
Yeah.
We're on accounts.shopify.com, which makes me think this is a single sign-on system, which means if I do log in, there's going to be some kind of handler on help.shopify.com to handle authentication.
Mm-hmm.
So the way single sign-on flows tend to work is you get redirected to some central account system,
Right.
which we did when we log in, with some kind of ID. And there might have even been a post in there in between. Let's get ordering things the other way around. So there was a post to browser feedback, but not any other post in the meantime. So that'll be something that's happening client side. That's fine. So I'm not actually going to log into Shopify because I can't remember what my details are. But worth seeing how it deals with the failure all the same. So there's going to be some kind of handler back on help.shopify.com to handle that auth flow. Right. And man, can I might have a Shopify? No, I don't.
It's all
I
good.
can't remember. Can't remember what Shopify creds are.
Let's talk about the Wayback URL stuff, because one of the things that I think a lot of hackers don't understand how valuable it is. It's the historic data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you go after the historic data that comes back from Wayback URL, or just go into archive.org manually if you don't want to use tools? Why is important to you? Why is it such a valuable thing to do?
That's a really good question. So, generally speaking, I think companies get better at building stuff over time.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of by definition, that means that they weren't as good in the past.
Right.
So if there's any old stuff hanging around, it kind of seems more likely that there's going to be issues with it in a lot of ways. So you could change your logic around and say, well, it's older, therefore, they've had more time to find the bugs. So, maybe not. But in my experience, older stuff tends to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And the other is there's more information, right? Like if browsing the site as it is gives you X amount of information, also being able to look at how it used to look will give you even more information. So I've got 35,985 URLs in here, which is probably too much to look at. Note that I did sort them as well, though, so that they're all kind of grouped into something approaching their hierarchical order, which means I can easily skip stuff that I've kind of already looked at. So here, for example, some GraphQL admin API reference stuff.
Oh, yeah, it looks interesting.
Yeah, well, like
docs.
Potentially.
But something that everyone's missing. Go back. You missed it. Go back. What do you see in the address bar?
Yeah.
Shopify.dev. I mean, it's not in scope, but I mean, if, in a company like Verizon Media where everything they own is in scope, that's another domain you could go after, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But not in this case.
And standard sort of a thing. If I notice a redirect, play with it. Why not? So there's some redirect. It's going straight to first off a different URL, which is kind of interesting. So the one I was on was API GraphQL. So it looks like the thing it's doing is adding in the EN.
Mm-hmm.
So let's have a look at that one instead. And now that's the point that it's redirecting me to shopify.dev. So, I'd be trying to figure out, well, is this like a lookup thing? If I just put some gibberish in here, is it still going to give me the same redirect? And the answer is no. Is it preserving query string parameters? Also no. So in that case, looking like there's not much I can do to affect it, but
okay.
Whenever you see a redirect, it's always worth having a quick play around to see if you can turn it into an open redirect.
Yeah.
They are useful.
That's very helpful. So, like, one of the things that I like doing is the information gathering. I focus way too much on asset discovery than information
Mhm.
gathering. I just go straight from asset discovery. I mean, I use Meg religiously. I do similar things with Meg. I've talked to you about this. I'm going to post a video on how I use Meg for a lot of my discovery phases. But seeing the amount of tooling you have done to build on top of like smaller tools, it's great. I didn't even know you had the title grabber thing that you showed. That's extremely helpful, so you don't have to do it in Bash. Probably a lot faster than the way I do it right now.
Yeah, well, like that's the way I was doing it originally. I, I guess the thing I try to do is pay attention to how often I have to spend too long doing something.
Yeah.
And if I have to do it more than a few times, I'm like, right, I think it's time to build a tool here. So speaking of which, that's something I just used there was there's nearly 36,000 URLs in here. I have a tool called you are interesting, or URI and interesting smashed together. That just tries to spot like some things that are potentially interesting about URL. So you can probably spot some themes after I run this through. So we're down to 1,799.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some XML files here. No, the word admin appearing
Yeah.
in quite a few of
One.
these. That's one of the things it looks for. And often that'll give you false positives, especially on something like a help site. But they're potentially interesting. And I might even just say, you know what, I want just things that have got query string parameters in them.
Why?
So these are pages that they have input by definition. Right. So, let's pick on this one. This has got this ref equals mixture media or whatever that is. So, like, does that parameter have any kind of effect? So, for a start, it's reflected in the page, okay. Or at least probably. I'm going to append a known value to this and see, is it reflected in the page? Yes, it is. This is Shopify we're talking about. The chances of this being XSS is basically minimal, but
But depends on the target, right? Depends on the target. Like in some cases with a newer target that's not as mature as Shopify, then finding those parameters could be a vulnerability potentially, whether it's XSS, whether it's open redirect, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And search terms. That's cool.
Yeah, so there's some search functionality in here. STP, STQ. I don't know what STP stands for. STQ, the Q probably stands for query. That's something that's worth having a look at. Although they couldn't find that page, apparently. So maybe that doesn't exist anymore. This one looks interesting. This is probably dead, though, right? Like help.shopify.com, index.php. I don't think so. No, not so much. That's a pretty reasonable excuse to show you another thing that Wayback URLs can do, though. So you might have noticed if you do the help, there's this get versions thing. And wow, it doesn't work at all.
So you can get like different versions of it that's been indexed on archive.org.
Exactly.
Very cool.
So apparently it doesn't have any versions of that, which is kind of confusing because it gave me that URL. So let's find a different one as an example. We stored this as URLs. Wayback URLs.
While you do that, I'm going to just talk over really quickly. So the point of getting the get versions for people that are watching this and going, why? Why is it important? As these files come in, they're being developed, especially like a JavaScript file, right? As more things are being pushed to it, you want to be able to see those because in one version, you may have something that it doesn't exist in the newer version. They might be removed, but then you go to that endpoint and it's still up. It might be vulnerable, whatever that is. But you want to find different versions. Maybe it could give you different information, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So this accordion.js might be a good example. So let's go Wayback URLs, get versions. for this URL. Okay, so it looks like they've only got one in this case, but there is some older, but it exists, which it doesn't anymore.
But you get to see it at least.
Is the point. So
yeah, very interesting.
And sometimes, that can be really telling as well. Like here it's an accordion component, but if you see something in your Wayback URLs output that's like config.js or something like that, let's find some more JavaScript.
I mean, honestly, man, like if you think about it, in the case of like a Facebook, for example, or Google, like this version control or get version thing is very, very interesting, because if you could pull like a version of a app from 2012 and they happen to leave some of those API endpoints, it's a gold mine, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it hasn't been updated.
Yeah, so here's a real good example. So we've got versions of this site.js going back to 2017 through 2018.
Probably when it got removed.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll go and fetch these. So let's do save things with the 200 response code, delay of 10 milliseconds. These are all on web.archive.org, so I'm going to enable keep alives, and I'm going to store them in site.js versions or something like that, right? So we'll go off and find and fetch all of those from archive.org. Site.js versions, and then go and have a look at them, right?
Do you use FFF over Meg nowadays?
I tend to when I'm doing stuff like this. If I have a list of URLs already and I want to fetch them, a pipe to FFF works really well. If I want to go and do content discovery across lots and lots of servers, I'll use Meg. Generally speaking, I
feel like after watching this stream myself, the next version of me doing Recon is going to be a lot different than today with how much that I've seen so far. Dude. This is incredible. This is very cool for me. I'm learning a few things. This is awesome.
Yeah. So we got all of these JavaScript files. We've got 12 of them. That's enough that we could just look at them manually. So if I open them all in Vim, I can kind of fairly quickly look through all of them individually. It looks like there was a change between those first two. It's all very much client-side stuff, which makes sense because it's a JavaScript file.
Right.
They were using jQuery at the time. And I can even go look at those manually, but I probably also want to go, are there any secrets in there? Are there any AWS keys? Unlikely, but possible.
Yeah, but this is a weird example of looking at it, but in a lot of cases, it might be doable, right? If you find that, like you were saying, config.js would be a gold mine of like finding keys, and they may work.
Yeah, potentially.
Very cool.
And like this is something that I do quite a lot actually. Is I grep for URLs because there's going to be loads of them, but there might be some interesting stuff in here. There's going to be like jQuery and archive.org and all that kind of thing.
Someone in chat's calling you Inspector Gadget of bug bounties, just so you know.
Oh man, I do have another tool actually that I'll show you that I use in combination with that. So
does Meg work the same way as FFF? No, Meg, from what I understand, is a really good tool to spray, at least for me, to spray one single endpoint across an entire infra, and it's very useful. I'll do a video on it soon. I talked about it a little bit on my DEF CON talk. You should definitely check it out. But they're similar, but I feel like Meg is very powerful when it comes down to the pray and spray method versus FFF is more of an information gathering tool that could do what Meg does in a different way. Did I say that right, or do you agree with that?
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Okay.
So I just made this little .scope file that's kind of like in the root of my project directory, I guess. So like I have one of those per target, and it's just a set of regexes for domains that are in scope. And then when I'm in, for example, like all of these root things that I searched for earlier on, and I go for URLs, I'm going to find a whole bunch of stuff like exchangemarketplace.com, right? And I don't want to have to worry about those, so I can pipe them through the in-scope tool.
Oh, nice.
And it will filter out any that are not in scope based on that scope file.
Very freaking helpful. All right, that's really
definitely.
good. Holy
so that
shit.
goes from 6,000 to 4,000 or something. So we cut out like a couple of thousand things.
Could you also do the other way around?
Potentially.
Because like I'm thinking about it like outside of Shopify, right? Because Shopify has a very strict rule with what's in scope. But for Verizon Media, if you could do the other way, stuff that not in scope of your work, can you identify new domains that could be owned by them potentially?
Yeah. So let me have a think. So it could take the URLs and put them into some file called all URLs.
Okay. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought I was asking if there was maybe an argument for it, or because like if you think about it, like that Exchange website is in their scope, but like if they wouldn't have told you specifically it's in scope, and they would have said everything we own is in scope, how could we, how could you expand that perimeter and finding more domains that's potentially owned by this company?
Yeah. So I've made a file that's got all URLs and the in-scope URLs, and we can do a diff between them. That doesn't seem like very many results.
But is it sorted? Is it sorted maybe?
Yeah, it's sorted.
Because it might be showing you the unique stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. So I think it actually was genuinely just those ones. So it was the sorting that brought it down before.
That's very interesting. Okay. That's really cool.
So yeah, you could do it that way too. A couple of extra steps, but...
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like mostly finding like corporate domains. Like, can I find a corporate domain that Shopify uses that's like Shopify without like the vowels, for example? That could come up in there, right?
And that's actually one of the things that I had in mind when I was writing Asset Finder, which is a few of the sources that it uses. Like, I can't remember what sources it uses. So like ThreatCrowd, for example, right, will often give you things that are tangentially related. So if you look at ThreatCrowd.
Security is saying, should we just do a weekly segment with Tom? I think we got to do like more occurrences of just bringing Tom and saying, what has changed since the last time we've done Recon?
I just started searching for Spotify instead of Shopify. I feel bad now.
That's great. That's freaking awesome.
So Shopify. So if we have a look for Shopify.com, for example, like there's going to be stuff in here that is nothing to do with Shopify in a lot of ways. So like this Shakeology Beach, who knows, code.jquery.com and a bunch of other stuff. ShopifyCDN.com, right?
Yeah.
So this is stuff that's not subdomains of Shopify.com, but it's related. So I haven't seen ShopifyCDN.com come up. I've seen CDN.shopify.com. So like that is interesting, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things Asset Finder does is it will spit out stuff like that for you to find. Who knows if it actually will or not, but it does that by default. So there's the subs only option. I think one of the real common questions I get about Asset Finder is, well, it's giving me stuff that's out of scope. And it's like, well, that was actually originally kind of the point.
Yeah.
was to find stuff that's not mentioned anywhere. Like you can brute force for subdomains, but how do you find like related top level domains? I think that's much harder.
Yeah.
And you can do some tricks like when you have some candidates to check, you can do who is on them, because like I did Spotify again. Shopify.com. So like Shopify will probably do all of their DNS management through the same kind of thing. So in this case, not a right lot of information about them, but it's going to be Mark Monitoring, for example. So I could rule a bunch of things out and say, okay, that ShopifyCDN.com, for example, Like, is that also through Mark Monitor? Yes, it is.
It's a
Okay,
higher
that
chance that they own it.
increases my confidence that it's probably going to be owned by them. And there's, other things you can do, check IP ranges and so on and so forth. But, interestingly, not resolved, which is funny because it had a who is entry. So, did they move off of this at some point and onto something else? Well, like wayback URLs might tell me. Let's pipe that into Vim so that and that might give me a whole different set of paths that I can go and look at on current stuff that's not linked right now. So I wouldn't find it through wayback URLs against cdn.shopify.com, for example. And this is taking a real long time, which means it's probably got a lot of results.
Yeah. Someone says, if anything, this is discouraging getting into bug bounties, seeing pros like Tom going at it like this. I mean, no, yes and no, because like, one, it's discouraging because like Tom has been, and correct me if I'm wrong, man, but like you've been doing this for a few years, right? You didn't start with having all these tools. You realized there is a need for a tool. You wrote it on your own. You open sourced it. But also, a good thing for you guys is that he's already open sourced all of these. He has done talks on these. He has done blog posts on this. He's shown how to use these tools, and you can come, get up to speed by just putting the effort and time into learning all of these, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I'd already been doing dev stuff before I started doing Bug Bounty. I think I looked the other day, so I started doing Bug Bounty about 4 years ago. Although really I've been doing Bug Bounty for about 2.5 or 3 years because I kind of mostly stopped about a year and a half or so ago. Maybe it's even 2 years ago now. I burnt out and just didn't have the energy to do anything. I submitted a couple of bugs recently though. I've been kind of starting back into things a little bit, which is awesome.
Very cool.
I think having moved house and stuff is useful because I was sort of basically been sat in the dark for a year.
Being in the garage without any sunlight does not sound like a good. It gets boring after a while, man, especially with like being in quarantine, right?
Yeah, it's a real bad idea. This is taking a really long time. I don't trust that at all. I think that bad things might happen if I leave that to run much longer.
It's all good, man. This is really helpful. I mean, this was very, very cool to see. It's giving me some new stuff to, do for the next time when I do Recon and not when my guests do it. Last question for you. Do you do any Google Docs at all outside of the regular in URL, in title, in text and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely.
That's the last thing, and that's one of the things that Tommy did that was really, really cool. So I wanted curious to see if you do similar things.
Yeah, I definitely do Google Docs, and usually it's going to be when I have something specific I'm looking for. So, what's a good example? Usually it'll be something like I've spotted like a piece of like a name for something that I don't understand or I don't recognize, some sort of domain specific piece of information. So like that pod ID thing we came across earlier on.
Interesting, yeah. And their community stuff.
Or like if I don't know what pod ID is or where it comes up, for example. So I would use docs for things like that, for sure. Yeah. I also have a extension that I wrote, which may or may not be working. Who knows? Which is to help with Google Docking.
Okay. Is this public also?
Yeah, public also. It's a little bit of a pain to set up, but so what you do is you have some token or something exported, and then you have 8443. Apparently, I'm missing them. Who knows if this is going to work or not? We'll find out. And then you can like click Google URLs. Okay, it's not working. Let's fix it. And then that's a really good way to see whether it's working or not.
So you're pulling data from the Google search?
Yeah, exactly. So
very cool.
What I'm doing is trying to find the URLs for all of the links. So apparently this snippet doesn't work anymore. So I'm going to look for the URLs in the source. So it's going to be something like this. And I'm going to come up with a query selector that's going to match that. So we are somewhere in body, div main, or backwards. They've added random classes. So div G would probably do it. So the first href in there. Does that give me any results at all? No, length 0. So we're not directly in anymore. So that will find me a bunch of links, maybe. And then I'll map over them to take the href.
Chill, chat, chill. Some of you guys today. Someone in chat says, I worship this man from now
on. Yeah, you really shouldn't.
You guys.
The point is there's some JavaScript which pulls all of the links out of the page.
Okay.
So if I save that, and then there's another bit of JavaScript which takes you to the next page of search results. So if you have a dork going on,
someone from the Shopify security team is watching, just so you know. Someone says, sorry to cut you off, Tom. Shopify security team member here. Really fun to watch Recon on our infra. Thanks for the stream.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. So we're on page 2 now, and then page 3, 4, 5. Notice the links
shit in the background.
In the background.
Yeah.
So I can just keep clicking this until I get a captcha or something. And I think that's actually the last page. I should have done the repeat thing omitted. And I found a whole bunch of links here that weren't the right ones. It looks like it was the Google cache links and stuff like that, but that's fine too. I should have saved them in the file.
Easily though. You can easily clean that up.
Yeah. So, whoops. So if I run that into some file called docs or something, and then just run it through a few pages.
Interesting. Okay.
Then I've got all of those. They're in my docs file. And I can just use my in-scope tool to filter them, right? So I've got all of those Shopify ones, or I could just grep Shopify or something. That'll probably work. Or actually,
I was going to say other way, because the Google one's going to have Shopify in them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got all of these things that I could be looking at, and it doesn't matter what the doc was.
Yeah.
I have another one of those, which is kind of fun. So you'll have seen there's a few different options in here. So one is HackerOneScope. That's useful.
That's good. Okay.
But also GitHub repos. So I don't know if this will work or not, but we'll find out. Oh man, I'm not signed in. Can you search GitHub without being signed in?
You can do it through Google.
Shopify.
No,
well, I want to
give
be
you the source. It wouldn't show you the code. No.
Yeah. So if this is still working properly, which would be awesome. No, it is not. So another good example here. So this is some query selector I wrote a while ago that apparently no longer works. So I'm looking for this link here. Wow. Can I not just use straight links? That would be really good. So this is some AV-aligned middle stuff. Actually, is that even a thing still? It doesn't look like it. Map.
Are you trying to
Okay,
pull
yeah.
the repo URL for all these?
Yeah, so they've removed the code search results link, unfortunately. So let's have a look. So we're on our query selector. We want to. There you go. That's the thing I was looking for, I think. So there's a class of code search results. That sounds like the kind of thing we want. Search results. So that's a div.
Okay.
And then we want this anchor that's in there. There's going to be a few different links. So this is going to be one that has, let's see if we just ask for anchors, we get way too many. So let's look for the v-align middle ones instead. Okay, 10. That sounds like the kind of stuff I want. And then we'll map across them and take the nodes href.
Nice.
So that's all of the GitHub URLs. Cool. So that's what I want. So I'm going to throw that into my funky Chrome extension for GitHub repos.
All right, Jad, drop some emotes for Tom just fixing this on the fly as we go. Someone in the chat's like, there's a meme where the guy wants to change a light bulb, but the drawer is broken, so he needs to fix that first. Tom reminds me of that. That's great.
For sure. Okay, cool. So that's working.
Okay.
But watch this. So what I can do is use web paste and say, well, I want to clone 10 at a time. So 10 things with this gh clone.
Chat, there's 264.
So now,
drop some
when I talk through these results, it's going to automatically clone each page of results in the background.
Oh shit! So you're cloning all of them. Oh, this okay. I see where you're going with this. I have very vivid memories of you doing these in the past.
So they all cloned, and then like if I go to the next page, you can see it starting to clone the next set in the background. So we've made a directory called github.com in here, and there's all of these different results, and they're all like pre-cloned and stuff. So I can just go and look in there, and you probably wouldn't do this for something like as simple as search as Shopify, for example. Right. But like maybe you would, and then maybe you would also. I don't have my scope file on this machine, but also like do stuff like grep for URLs, of which there's going to be lots, and lots of them mostly out of scope. So that's a really good place to use that in scope tool, and find like in scope URLs in GitHub repos that mentioned the word Shopify. And you'll find all kinds of things like that.
I think the GitHub one is very, very useful for like, especially if you go through like the old commits, just for even files you find, like URLs you find. That's really, really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. So that's something that you can do with those is gh dump or something like that. Git dump. Yeah, I have this little script which pulls out all of the Git objects into plain text files in a directory called Git objects. It's on my GitHub somewhere as well. So if I run git dump in this repo, I'll have a directory called Git objects, and this is every file that has ever existed in this repository. Wow. Like effectively, I can grep the history now and say, well, I want to find all of the URLs that are in here, for example, and then I want to say I don't have the in scope set up here, so I want to find just the ones that mention Shopify somehow, and I'm going to sort them, and then I'll pass them through that URL interesting thing, at which point, I might find some more interesting URLs.
I mean, some of the stuff looks interesting, like this Shopify.dev with 3,000 looks interesting, but that's really, really cool. This is I'm mind blown. The chat seems to be mind blown so far. This is really cool stuff, man. Again, if you're watching this, if you want to use all these tools that Tom has shown us, go ahead and check out his GitHub repository. All these are on there. You've seen me use a bunch of them. Very, very good tools. Highly recommend doing it. Any last words of advice, words of encouragement, anything you want to throw out there before we move to the next segment?
Persistence is key.
Yep.
Like a lot of hacking and doing bug bounty stuff is looking at 10,000 things to find one thing. And I don't pick 10,000 as like an arbitrarily high, exaggerated number. Often it's more than that.
Yeah.
It's especially with the program like Shopify, for example, 99.9% of the stuff that you look at is going to be fine. So know when to move on, but also try not to get discouraged.
That's awesome, Matt.
Cheers, homie.
Thank you for the sub. Well, the chat is enjoying this, you being on here. It's been great. I think everybody, including myself, has learned a lot. We're going to have to cut this short just because it's been already an hour and some change. I want to keep this. No, you're okay, man. Like, this was very valuable and useful. We'll bring Tom back hopefully another day once he has a little bit of time. We'll bring him on for a part 2, and maybe we could do something else next time and see where it all goes. But this was really, really cool. If you're watching this on YouTube, even if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're watching it right now, go follow Tom right now on Twitter. He has some really, really good content. He also did some streaming. He has done some QA on his YouTube channel. Check him out. You did an awesome talk at, I think you did BursaCon and NahamCon both, when you talked about how to build word lists and how to do bug bounties with Bash. I highly recommend looking those up. Just type in Tom Nom Nom. This should come up. Very, very cool stuff. That's it. We'll be back next week with another guest. Thank you so much, Tom, for doing this.
Thanks for having me, man. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Okay, one sec. I'm not going to let you go. One sec. I did not mean to let Tom go yet.